Hello and welcome to another video in the Code and Chill Java Swing stream. So what I did say that we wanted to do next was start on making like a timer so that we can kind of limit how many times per second that we kind of update, and also maybe keep some sort of a interesting frames per second, maybe make a counter or something to do like frame counter. This is fairly boilerplate-ish, but it's always fun to have a go at writing again. So let's jump on in. Okay, let's bring this up over here. Right. So for this one, we want to kind of think about maybe when we actually do stuff like creating the stuff. So when we create the display, we're going to want two possibilities of create display, but both are going to want timers in. So let's take a look at our create display. We're initializing. We've got an update. We've got a render. We've got a main. Why are we not? Where am I not? Create display is getting called. Did I not? Oh, I'm looking in main, not in core. Sorry, that's why. I'm thinking, why have I not got create display? Right, okay, so create displays here. Now I do want the same thing, but without scale. So I kind of want this without scale as well, just in case we just want to leave the scale as standard. Do you know what I mean? And just don't do any scaling, because there's the possibility we won't want to do any scaling. I can add that. I'll add that afterwards. I'll do this first time. So the idea here is I do want to kind of get like a starter time or a start time of when we begin running our application. So ideally, I want that to be like a long, so we can do current time in milliseconds. So let's start adding that here as well. We've got the running pulse there, but let's say that we say this wants to be kind of, I don't want to do this. I want this to be private because it's just going to be within the internals of this and used like a counter sort of thing. So I'll say private long start timer. And I'll start it off as like 0. And then when we actually run, we'll kind of capture the current time. So what we'll do is whenever we create our display before we get started, we want to figure out when that was. So what we'll do is we'll say our start timer is equal to system current time in milliseconds. That'll give us a long. So now we've started up our timer. We also now want to think about, okay, well, I need to kind of find out the difference between every run. So during our run, before we start this whole loop here, we need to set up some variables. So I want a long last time. So what happened previous, that could be called previous time, last time, whatever you want to call it. I'll set that to system dot nano time. And that'll need to be changed into like there. We also want some sort of a delta, a difference, like DT or delta time. So double DT. And now we'll set that to 0 and we'll work that out as we go. I want to make like how many nanoseconds I want a single tick to be. So for now, we'll do like 60 updates per second. So I'll do a double. Nanoseconds is equal to 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.0, and divide that by how many ticks per second that you want. So I'm going to say 60. So the next thing I want to do is go and build out the timer, like the thing where we're at currently. So we'll say long timer is equal to system dot current time in milliseconds again. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of set our frames up. So we want int frames equal to 0. We're going to do kind of addition of how many frames in a moment. Into updates also equal to 0. So we need to figure out how many seconds did this take to load, for instance. So we could just do a system out for now. So we could say something like load time or something, and then literally we can kind of, let's see, we want the system current time in milliseconds. We want to take away our start timer, but then we need to divide it by 1000 to get seconds. Then we'll just literally say that'll do. Right, so now we've got that sort of load time. Now, inside our running sort of loop, let's clean this up a little bit over here, maybe. So inside here, I want to kind of figure out, like, now, what time is it now during the start of the while loop? So I'll say long now equals system dot nano time. Then I need to figure out, I need to add stuff to the delta. So the difference between starting time and now. So the nice thing is we can do delta or dt is equal to, well, actually, we're going to increment delta. So we're going to say now minus last time, but we need to figure out in comparison to nanoseconds. So divide it by ns. Now we need to reset last time to be now. So we'll say last time equals now. Here's where we need to do some logic to figure out whether we want to update the screen or not. Yeah. So if our delta time, if that hits 1 or above, then it's time to do an update. So we can do that. Say if dt is greater than or equal to 1, that's when it's time to do our update. So we can literally get rid of this update. Inside here, update. But I also want to say, well, I'm adding to my updates counter now. That way we know we've done an update. So we can kind of check the frequency of these updates. But I also now need to take that number away from our delta. So I'll say delta time minus. There we go. So now we've got our delta time dealt with. Now, for now, I'm just going to render as fast as it can. I don't care too much about how fast it's rendering. So we can do that. So we can just say frames plus whenever we render. So now what we can do, we can check every second. We can check what the updates per second is and also what the frames per second is. So for now, what I'm going to say is if my system dot current time milliseconds minus my timer is greater than 1000, then we've hit at least a second. If that's the case, first we want to say timer plus equals 1000 so that we can kind of keep the timer ahead of that. And then we'll do another system out and literally say something like updates for our updates per second. Updates per second. Let's just call it that already. And then we'll do the same with frames. And we give it FPS. Oh, well, it'll print out every second as to what the updates are. Now we need to reset those updates and frames. So updates equals 0. Frames also equals 0. So now we've kind of got this frame counter / update counter, and also we're limiting the updates so it will be consistent across the board. So if your system's super fast, it's fine. If your system's slowish, that's fine too. There'll be no difference in the responsiveness of the update. So let's run it and see how it goes. So it's still running fine. We're getting around about, what's that? 2000 odd frames per second. Notice how it's now smoothly and slowly moving. Yeah. Most before it was like flying off the screen. It's got slow, smooth movement. At this point now we can start upping its, because that's going like 1 pixel per thing. So it's going about 60 pixels per second at that point. This can be upped now. So this can be sorted afterwards. But yeah, so now we've got this consistent speed of our thing. So if I wanted it to go faster, we could go into our sort of main where we're actually dealing with the controls. There's our actual controls. Updates, here we go. So notice how it's just minusing by 1. So you could have like a speed at this point. I would say minus equals 3, but now plus equals 3. Obviously, this should be a variable you kind of keep track of. So I'm just kind of hard coding it for now. Let's save that. Let's rerun this. And you can just tweak this as to how fast you want to go. So yeah, it's still quite smooth. It's fairly slow. It's not going crazy. We could probably get away with 6 for this push. It's working fairly smoothly. You probably want that a little bit faster, to be fair. So yeah, you can tweak that anyway. Have a play with it. But yeah, so that was it. We've done kind of a timer / update per second sort of capping. Now, if you didn't want your GPU to be throttling like crazy at all times, because I presume if you're playing a game, you don't expect to be going like 2000 frames per second. That's just going a bit silly. We could limit our FPS as well in the same way. So you could either limit it at the same limit as you've done for your updates, or you could limit it to maybe 120 frames per second or something like that, and just sort of give it that speed up a little bit. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. So let's call that, and we're going to have another break, and then we'll move on to something else in another video.